10th standard. Now, I'm sure all of you remember from last year what are polynomials. Anything that has a variable is a polynomial. For example, 2x plus 5. Is it a polynomial? Yes. 3x cube plus 5x plus 1. Is it a polynomial? Yes. Then I'm sure you remember what are monomials, binomials, trinomials. If there is one term, it is a monomial. If there are two terms, it is a binomial. If there are three terms, it is a trinomial. Of course, you will not be asked this year, these kind of questions, but it's better if you know them. For example, this has two terms, which means it is a binomial. This has three terms, which means it is a trinomial. Now one more, x plus 1 by x square. Is this a polynomial? No. Remember, in polynomials, the variables have only powers as whole numbers. Like, for example, x to the power 0, 1, 2, 3. These are all considered polynomials. But what happens if variable is in denominator? It becomes x to the power minus 2 when you bring this up. Which means whenever the power of a variable is negative, it is not a polynomial. So remember, polynomials are only those functions of variables which have power as whole numbers, that is from 0 to infinity. Now the next thing, if you remember, what are zeros of polynomials? For example, I wrote the polynomial 2x plus 5. What are the zeros of polynomials? Zeros of polynomials means instead of the variable, for example, instead of x, if I put some number which makes and solve this equation, if it becomes equal to 0, it means it is a zero of this polynomial. Now, how to find zeros? When we are finding zeros, we put this equal to 0. Now, the first thing you need to know, what is the power of variable in it? Highest power. Highest power of variable is 1, which means this polynomial has only one zero. What is it? Or whenever it's a linear polynomial, which means the highest power is 1, all you have to do is keep x on one side and transpose the rest. So x is equal to minus 5 by 2. So this is the zero of this polynomial. Minus 5 by 2 is the zero of this polynomial. Why? Because if we put minus 5 by 2 instead of x, the entire equation becomes 0. So how do we do it? 2 into x. Minus 5 by 2 plus 5, right? 2 and 2 cancels, we get minus 5 plus 5, which is equal to 0. Which means minus 5 by 2 is the zero of this polynomial. Now, what about this one? X square plus 7x plus 5. What is the highest power of the variable? 2, which means there are two zeros for this polynomials. You have two numbers which when you put instead of x, the whole thing will become 0. Now, in this year, we are going to learn how to find zeros of quadratic equation. Quadratic equations are where the power of the variable is 2, which means it has two zeros. So in this module, we are going to learn how to factorize this and find the zeros. Okay, so we have this quadratic equation, highest power is 2, which means it has two zeros. So how do we find the zeros? Whenever you are finding the zeros, put the polynomial equal to 0. Now, how do you find the zero? There are two ways you can do it. One, there is a formula, but normally in this chapter they will not teach you the formula. The formula you learn in quadratic equations chapter. The second way to find the polynomials is by splitting the middle term. So how do we split the middle term? Draw something like this. Now see, what is the first term? 10, and the last term is, see, it's just x square, which means it is 1. So 10 into 1 is 10, and what is there in the middle? Plus 7. Don't forget to take the signs. So you need to find two numbers which when you multiply you get 10 and which when you add you get 7. So can you think of any two numbers which when you multiply you get 10 and when you add you get 7? If you want, pause the video, because after this I'll be showing you the answer. Pause the video, think of the two numbers and see if it is right. Alright, the two numbers I've got is 2 and 5. 2 plus 5 is 7, 2 into 5 is 10. So we split the middle term. First number is 2, so I'll write plus 2x. Second number is 5, I'll write plus 5x plus 10 equal to 0. Now I'll pair 2 each. Now what is common in these two? X is common. which means I get x plus 2 inside. If I have x plus 2 here, I should get x plus 2 here as well. Alright. So what can I take common to make it x plus 2? I can take plus 5 common, which means here 5 goes out and here 2 remains, equal to 0. Now x plus 5 into x plus 2 equal to 0, which means x plus 5 equal to 0 and x plus 2 equal to 0, which means x equal to minus 5 and x equal to minus 2. So we found the two zeros. The two zeros of this equation are minus 5 and minus 2. If you substitute minus 5 instead of x in this equation, the entire thing will become 0. Or if you substitute minus 2 instead of x, the entire equation will become 0. Now this is another equation. We need to find zeros of this. What is the highest power of x? 2, which means there are two zeros, which means this is a quadratic equation. Again we'll split the middle term. So when I am finding zeros, I'll put equal to 0. Now I draw this. First term into last term. First into last. Minus 12 into 1, which means minus 12. And in the middle it is just x, which means it is 1x, right? So the number in the middle is 1. Now what do we need? Two numbers which when you multiply you get minus 12 and when you add you get 1. Pause the video, think of any two numbers and then check if it is correct. So the two numbers are minus 3 and plus 4. Minus 3 into 4, minus 12, minus 3 plus 4, plus 1. So how do I split it? X square, minus 3 it is, so minus 3x, plus 4x, minus 12. Remember here, when we are doing, here it's minus 12, whenever minus signs are there, you need to remember to take the minus signs when you multiply first and last term. So now I'll pair these two. So what is common? X. So x minus 3, which means I need to get x minus 3 equal to 0 here. Now, simple way to know what to remove. Here we need minus 3, here there is minus 12. Minus 12 by minus 3 is plus 4. So, we need to take plus 4 common. How do you check whether you are right? Do plus 4 into x, plus 4x, plus 4 into minus 3, minus 12, which means what you've done is right. So, we get x plus 4 into x minus 3 equal to 0, which means x plus 4 equal to 0 and x minus 3 equal to 0, which means x equal to minus 4 and x equal to plus 3. So we have found the two zeros of this equation, minus 4 and plus 3. If you substitute minus 4 instead of x, the entire thing will become 0, or if you substitute 3 instead of x, the entire equation becomes 0. Alright guys, we'll try for one more equation. Again the highest power is 2, which means there are two zeros. So I'll put this equal to 0. Now what should we get when we multiply? First term is 1, 1 into minus 6, minus 6, and the middle term is minus x, which means minus 1x, which means when you add you should get minus 1. Now can you think of two numbers which when you multiply you get minus 6, when you add you should get minus 1. So what are the two numbers you can think of? 3 into 2 is 6, but we need minus 6. So it will be 2 and minus 3. 2 into minus 3, minus 6. 2 minus 3, minus 1. So we split it, plus 2x minus 3x minus 6 equal to 0. I pair these two. Now x is common, which means I need x plus 2. Here also I should get x plus 2. Now how do I know what to take common? I can do it directly, or I can do minus 6 by 2 minus 3, which means what comes outside? Minus 3, which means x minus 3 into x plus 2 equal to 0, which means x minus 3 equal to 0 and x plus 2 equal to 0, which means x equal to 3 and x equal x equal to minus 2. So these are the two zeros. If you want, you can substitute 3 instead of x or minus 2 instead of x and check. The entire thing will become 0. Now let's try one more equation. Again the highest power is 2, which means there are two zeros. Now doing this problem, whenever you're solving this problem, make sure the powers are in order. Just like for division in the previous module, what did I tell you? When you're dividing, first you have to make sure it's from highest power to lowest power. Same thing you need to do it here. Here it's not in order, so I have to rearrange it as 6x square minus 7x minus 3. Now we are finding the zeros, so equal to 0. Now when you multiply, what you should get? Minus 3 into plus 6. First and last term, don't forget. 6 into minus 3, minus 18. And what is there in middle? Minus 7. So don't forget to take the negative signs. Now two numbers, which when you add you get minus 7, and which when you multiply you get minus 18. So pause the video, try to think of two numbers. Well, the two numbers are plus 2 and minus 9. 2 into minus 9, minus 18, 2 minus 9, minus 7. So I have 6x square plus 2x minus 9x minus 3 equal to 0. I pair these two. I can take 2x common here. Always take how much ever you can take common, you should take common. So it's not just 2. I can take, it's not just x, I can take 2x common, so I should take 2x common. So what remains here? 3x plus 1. I have taken the entire thing, so 1 will remain. Which means I need to get 3x plus 1 here as well. Minus 3 by 1, minus 3. So I take minus 3 common there. So I get 2x minus 3 into 3x plus 1. This, group them together and into this, equal to 0, which means 2x minus 3 equal to 0 and 3x plus 1 equal to 0, which means x equal to 3 by 2 and x equal to minus 1 by 3. After transposing, keep x on one side, transpose everything on the other side. So what are the two zeros of this equation? 3 by 2 and minus 1 by 3. There will be some equations where you get both the numbers will be the same. That is also possible. It is called equal roots. Equations having equal roots, which you'll learn in quadratic equation. But just remember that a quadratic equation can have two roots which are the same. For example, it can 2 and 2 can be the two roots of the equation. Minus 3 and minus 3 can be the two roots of the equation. It just means it has equal roots. Now the next topic you need to remember is, okay, a quadratic polynomial, we saw that, right, where the power is 2. The general form is the general form is ax square plus bx plus c. This is the general form of a quadratic polynomial. What is the general form of a cubic polynomial? Ax cube plus bx square plus cx plus d. What does it mean? A is the coefficient of x square. Whatever is there with x square, this is the coefficient. Whatever is b is whatever is there with x, b is its coefficient, and c is whatever is constant, whatever is remaining. Similarly, in cubic polynomial, a is coefficient of x cube, b is coefficient of x square, c is coefficient of x, and d is the constant. Now we get a relationship between zeros and coefficients. How many zeros will this polynomial have? Highest power is 2, which means 2 zeros. Let's say the zeros are called alpha and beta. How many zeros will this have? It's a cubic polynomial, highest power is 3, which means zeros are alpha, beta, gamma. There will be 3 zeros. Now what are the relationship between zeros and coefficients? In any given polynomial, let's say quadratic polynomial, you will find that alpha plus beta equal to minus b by a. If you add the two zeros of that polynomial, it will always be equal to minus b by a. When you divide the coefficient, negative coefficient of x with a, it will always be equal. The second relation you get is alpha beta equal to c by a. If you multiply the two zeros of the given polynomial, it will always be equal to the value which you get when you divide c by a. So these are the two relationships between zeros and coefficients. Very important question for 10th standard. What are the relationship between zeros and coefficients for cubic polynomial? alpha plus beta plus gamma will be minus b by a. Alpha plus beta plus gamma will be minus b by a. Alpha beta plus beta gamma plus alpha gamma will be equal to c by a, and alpha beta gamma will be equal to minus d by a. So for cubic polynomials, we get three relations. If you add all three zeros, it will be the same as if you do minus b by a. If you multiply two zeros at a time and add them, the answer will always be same as when you divide c by a, and if you multiply all three zeros, you will get the same answer as when you do minus d by a. So this is the relationship between zeros and coefficients. Coefficients are a is whatever is there with x square in quadratic polynomial, b is whatever is with x, and c is whatever remains. So we'll try one or two problems so you'll understand better. Okay, now let's say the question is find the zeros of this, or zeros are also called roots of an equation. You'll be more familiar with this term roots in quadratic equations, but it's better you know right now zeros are also called roots of the equation. So if I tell you to find the roots of the equation, what I'm trying to tell you is to find its zeros. So question is find the roots of this equation and verify relation between zeros and coefficients. So first what we need to do is find the roots. So I'll put equal to 0, right? Now when you multiply, you should get 12 into 1, that is 12. And when you add, you should get what is in the middle, that is 7. So two numbers, pause the video and try to think. The two numbers are 4 and 3. 4 into 3, 12, 4 plus 3, 7. So I'll write it like this, x square plus, now I'll take the smaller number first always, 3x plus 4x plus 12 equal to 0. It does not matter whether you write plus 4x plus 3x or plus 3x plus 4x, but I generally find that if I take the smaller number first, it's easy to split and factorize. So factorize these two, what is common? X is common, so I'll get x plus 3 plus here I'll get plus 4 and x plus 3 equal to 0, which means x plus 4 into x plus 3 equal to 0, which means x plus 4 equal to 0 and x plus 3 equal to 0, which means x equal to minus 4 and x equal to minus 3. Now we have found the two zeros of this polynomial. Now we need to verify the relationship between zeros and coefficients. So what was it? Now let's say this is alpha, this is beta. What is the first relation? Alpha plus beta equal to minus b by a. How much is alpha? Minus 4. Beta is plus of minus 3 equal to, what is b? B is 7. Minus of b, minus 7. By a is how much? 1. Right? What is there with x square? It's 1. So a is 1. So I get minus 4 minus 3 minus 7, and minus 7 by 1 is minus 7. So left hand side equal to right hand side, which means we have verified the first relation. What is the second relation? Alpha beta equal to c by a. So what? Alpha is minus 4 into beta is minus 3 equal to c. What is c? 12. By a is 1, right? So minus 4 into minus 3, 12, and 12 by 1 is 12. Which means left hand side we got equal to right hand side, and we have verified the second relation between zeros and coefficients. Alright guys, let's say they give you this problem and they ask you to find the zeros and verify relationship between zeros and coefficients. How would you do that? First, is this a quadratic equation? Yes. Why? Highest power of x is 2, which means how many zeros will be there? 2 zeros. But how do you solve this problem? There are two ways you can do it. First, I can write this as 4x square plus 0x minus 7 equal to 0. This is one way to do it. So I got a middle term now. So how do we solve? Minus 7 into 4 minus 28, and in between it is 0, so 0. So we need two numbers which when we multiply we should get minus 28, and when we add we should get 0. Now it's okay, pause the video and see if you can think of two numbers which when we multiply we get minus 28 and when we add we get 0. If you are thinking 14 and minus 14, it's wrong because minus 14 into 14 is more than minus 28. Now in this case what is happening is we will be getting fractions over here. Alright. So when you have a problem where you are going to get fractions, the easy way to solve is using formula. Of course, you'll learn this formula only in quadratic equations chapter, but I think it's better you start learning the formula from right now. Because it's difficult to split, right? It's difficult to factorize now. So what is the formula you can use? Minus b plus or minus root of b square minus 4ac by 2a. This is a very, very important formula. So you will use this to find the zeros of this equation. So minus b, what is b? 0. So minus of 0 minus 0 plus or minus b square. Again 0 square. Why? Because b is 0. Minus 4a. A is 4 in this. And c. C is minus 7. Don't forget to take the negative sign. Don't forget to take the negative sign. By 2a, that is 2 into 4. Because what is with x square? 4. So now minus 0. 0 is 0 itself. So what do I get? Plus or minus root of b square. 0 square is 0. Minus 4 into 4, minus 16. Minus 16 into minus 7. Right? 7 6 are 42. 4, 7, 112. So minus into minus becomes plus. So the root of 112 by 8. Now how do we find root of 112? Prime factorize. So 112 to 56 to 28 to 14 to 771. Now see how many pairs are there. There is one pair of 2, another pair of 2. So here it becomes 2 and 2. So this will come out. 2 into 2 is 4. So it will become plus or minus 4. What is remaining? What is single? 7. So it will remain inside. Plus 4 root 7 by 8. So 4 ones are 2s are. So what do we get? Plus or minus root 7 by 2. This is what we get. So directly we have the zeros. One is plus root 7 by 2 and the other 0 is minus root 7 by 2. So these are the two zeros of this equation. So people, please remember this formula. Very important. Very, very important. Alright. Now this is another kind of problem that you will usually come across in this chapter. What have they given? Find k. We have to find the value of k. If 1 is one of the zeros of this polynomial. So what have they given? 1 is a 0 of this polynomial. We have to find k. Now see, there is one unknown, that is k, which means we need one equation. So how do we get it? They have told 1 is a 0 of this polynomial, which means what? P of 1 will be equal to 0. What does this mean? When I put 1 instead of x, this whole thing should become equal to 0. Why? Because they have told you that it is a 0. So I'll find P of 1. So it becomes 1 square minus 1 plus k equal to 0. Right? Now 1 square is 1 itself. 1 minus 1 0. So we get k equal to 0. So what is the value of k? 0. Now one more problem of the similar kind will solve. They have asked us to find k if minus 2 is one of the zeros of the polynomial, this polynomial. Which means they have told us minus 2 is a 0 of this polynomial. Which means when I put minus 2 instead of x, this whole thing should become equal to 0. And they have asked us to find k. One unknown, one equation. So we have p of minus 2 equal to 0. Because they have told us minus 2 is a 0. Now when I put minus 2 instead of x, what do I get? Minus 2 square plus of minus 2 plus k equal to 0. Right? So minus 2 square 4, minus 2 plus k equal to 0. 4 minus 2, 2 plus k equal to 0, which means k is equal to minus 2. So what is the value of k? Minus 2. Alright guys, now in this module we'll study one more kind of problem where you have to form the polynomial. They'll give you zeros and you have to create the polynomial. You have to find which polynomial zeros are the given zeros. Alright, now how do you form the polynomials? Again you have to remember two formulas. Now the general form of quadratic equation was what? Ax square plus bx plus c. Now how you can write it in another way, that is x square minus alpha plus beta x plus alpha beta. If you know the two zeros, this is how you can find the polynomial. Opposite, before they used to give you the polynomial, ask you to find the zeros. Now if I give you the zeros and ask you to find the polynomial, this is what you will use. For cubic it is x cube minus alpha plus beta plus gamma x square plus alpha beta plus beta gamma plus alpha gamma x minus alpha beta gamma. So there is a pattern, plus minus plus, plus minus plus minus. So start with plus, next will be minus, again next will be plus, next will be minus. So you just have to remember these two formulas. This is what you will use and this is what you will only use when they ask you to form the polynomial. Don't use this for anything else. No other problem use this. For other problems you will generally use relationship between zeros and coefficients. These two formulas you will only use to create a polynomial. Alright, let's see a problem. For example, they tell us minus 1 and 3 are zeros of a polynomial. Find the polynomial. How many zeros are there? 2, which means it is a quadratic polynomial. So what is the formula we need to use? X square minus alpha plus beta x plus alpha beta. Now I'll substitute x square minus alpha plus beta. Alpha is minus 1 plus beta is plus 3. X plus alpha beta minus 1 into 3. Which means I get x square minus 1 plus 3 plus 2 minus into 2 plus 2 minus 2x minus 1 into 3 minus 3. So we got the polynomial. If you find the zeros of this polynomial, it will be minus 1 and 3. Very easy. Okay, now let's see this problem. Let's say they have given you minus 3 by 2 and 5 by 3 are the two zeros, which means it's a quadratic polynomial. What is the relation we use? X square minus alpha plus beta x plus alpha beta. So will you do that? X square minus 3 by 2 plus 5 by 3 plus alpha beta, that is minus 3 by 2 into 5 by 3. Now minus 3 by 2 plus 5 by 3, we need to take LCM. LCM would be 6. So here into 3 into 3 into 2 into 2. So I'll get minus 9 plus 10 by 6, which means it is plus 1 by 6. Minus into plus minus 1 by 6 x, and here minus into plus minus 3 and 3 will cancel. I'll get 5 by 2. Now if you find zeros of this, you will get the zeros as this. Now from this I remember, like we have not solved this kind of question. Let's say this was not the question. They had given you this and asked you to find the zeros. How would you have found it? Because B and C are in fractions and you cannot factorize. Okay, you can use the formula to find the zeros easily. But let's say they had asked you to use factorization method itself, where you have to split the middle term. Then doing factorization for fractions is very difficult. So what you would do is, you would remove the denominator. Now leave this part for this question. Okay, now let's say they are not given this, they have asked you to find zeros of this. So now this becomes equal to 0. How do I remove the denominator? Now 6 and 2 are there. So first I'll try to remove 6. I'll multiply both sides by 6. I'll multiply both sides of the equation by 6. Since I'm multiplying both sides by 6, I'm not changing the equation. Remember, whenever you have to do this, you have to do it for both sides. So now 6 into x square, 6x square. 6 into minus 1 by 6x, 6 and 6 will cancel. I'll get minus 1x, that is minus x. 6 into minus 5 by 2, 2 ones are, 2 threes are, 3 into minus 5, minus 15. 0 into 6 is 0. So what have we got? We have converted this polynomial into this. This is the same as this. Now how will you find zeros? Now you can find it using factorization method. A, B and C. You know them. When you multiply, you need to get minus 15 into 6, minus 30. And when you add, you should get what is in between. That is minus 1. Now what are the two numbers? When you multiply, you should get minus 30 and add minus 1. Pause and think. Answer is 5 and minus 6. 5 into minus 6, minus 30. 5 minus 6, minus 1. So now you will split the middle term. You will write it as plus 5x minus 6x. Take whatever is common. When you find the zeros, you will see that you will get minus 3 by 2 and 5 by